This is Jane Johnson, Bill Brady doing a Facebook Live on May 19, 2021. Title is Doing Greater Works Than Yeshua Did, parenthesis, not doing, unparenthesis. Jane, anything you want to say to start out here? We did want to promote the One United Body website. So it's oneunitedbody.org. Go ahead, Jen, I can hear you now.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. We honor your journey. We're grateful to be family with you and have you participate in, as we dialogue, Bill and I often get the most immense revelation. And we've just had that today. So I just encourage you to open all your gates, choose not to go into overwhelm, but to go in hunger, to grow mightily, to become a mighty God that you can see the importance of understanding this revelation and the relevance of it today. We're just seeing it so relevant today. This isn't theology. This is absolute, the way, the truth, and the life, this revelation. You may choose to just now see yourself as a tree and to get greater flow and hunger and stability on this journey and not block it off. You can see you're putting your roots down further and further into the river of life, that you get the full flow that creates the immense hunger for these mysteries. You become a strong tree because you're so tapped into the tap root of the flow. Feel that now. It makes such a difference because you have to tap into that relationship and that function of the river of life. And Yeshua is at the heart of the river of life. And the river of life comes from Yeshua and from the Father. So it's a way of getting flow into your life that you will not go into overwhelm with these things. But excitement. The mysteries now are for the sons to be uncovered. So it is now your role to get the hunger for these mysteries and not choose to be a young child or a baby living in simple versions of the Gospels, but to grow into mighty God, to go into the more advanced versions of the Gospels. You're well able to do this. And this topic today is so exciting and profound, because we're seeing now we're going beyond what Jesus did in his earthly ministry. And that is such a hidden thing that most people think, well, we just copied what Jesus did on the earth is the most solid form of what we're meant to do. Anything else might be old. But we're actually seeing this, that's not true. And so we look at what is Yeshua doing now, not what he did on the earth. Oh, can anyone just confirm they can hear Bill as well and hear us both? If you put that in the comments, that would be great.
Let everybody know that we have a deep, deep love for you. And this gives you a chance to be able to hear whether you can hear me or not. Make a comment.
Yes, please, Bill. Do you always want to expand on the difference between doing and did?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's two places that Yeshua speaks about us doing greater works. One is in John 5 and one is John 14. We'll talk about the John 5 one first. Now, I want to just set the stage. You remember that Yeshua was baptized, and at that point, he's beginning to function as a king, and he's doing works on the earth as a king. I want to make that clear. He's not functioning as an evangelist or an apostle or something on the earth. He is functioning as a king on the earth. And so when he's healing the sick, he's healing the sick as a king. And that's why he heals everybody of all sicknesses. And when he's doing miracles, he's not doing miracles in the gifts of miracles. He's not doing healings in the gifts of healings. He's doing healing as a king, and he's doing miracles as a king. And so he's done these works up until the time of him speaking in John chapter 5. He's also, if we look at Hebrews chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, the elementary principles of kingship, we list them off for you here. For number 1, repentance from dead works. Number 2, faith towards God. Not talking about faith in Yeshua, but faith towards God. Number 3, the teaching of baptisms, plural. Number 4, the teaching of the laying on of hands. And number 5 and number 6 are the ones that Yeshua is referring to as the greater works in John 5, and that is resurrection of the dead. And then let me clarify, it's not judgment at that point, it's execution of judgment at that point. So Yeshua has been doing all these things up until John 5. The Father, and this is important to understand, he's looked at what the Father's doing, what the Father was doing up until that time, and everything he sees the Father do, he starts to do. The Father shows the Son everything that he is doing. Why? Because the Father loves the Son. We are sons also, so we get shown these things also. The point of being shown these things is that we may start doing these things, doing the works.
Bill, can I
Oh.
just chip in there with why execution of judgment? How is that different?
Okay, let me do a quick thing here. 3 things. Number 1, judgment. Number 2, resurrection of the dead. Number 3, execution of judgment, in that order. So Yeshua had already been doing judgment, but he had not been doing execution of judgment. Now let me explain what execution of judgment means. Let's talk about
Where did you get it from?
From John chapter 5. And also, it's also infused knowledge. In other words, I've read this scripture probably dozens of times in my lifetime, never saw this stuff, and now I see it. So that's infused knowledge, right? I mean, the revelation just kicks in and now you can see it. So let's do it this way. Let's talk about a regular court case in a human court. You got a judge and a jury, right? And let's say that the person's on trial for first-degree murder, which means they did it in cold blood. And there's potential death penalty here. Okay, don't trigger it that. So let's just say that that's the case. The first step in this court case is the decision whether this person is innocent or guilty, right? The second step in this court case is a decision of what the sentence will be. So the first part of this, of judging, is determining guilty or not guilty of the crime that they're accused of. The second part of being judged is having a sentence passed on you. And as someone who's being accused of murder, that sentence could probably be life imprisonment or death, right? Depending on what sentence is passed. So let's say that the jury determines that they're guilty, and between the jury and the judge, the decision is made that the sentence is going to be death. And then this person sits on death row for years, and at some final point, many years later, when all the appeals are done, the sentence is executed, the judgment is executed. At the point that this person is then killed, that's when judgment is executed. Now, the family of the person that was murdered, of the victim, does not get justice because this person was declared guilty. The family does not get justice because the death penalty was death, the sentence of death was passed. The family gets justice when the judgment is executed.
Now I see that, Yeah,
brings
that's the
justice.
end.
Justice comes after judgment, but it does not come until the judgment is executed.
Oh,
So
yeah, I see that's the end. What I don't get is how that comes out of John 5.
okay, let's take a look at John 5. I prepared for this to have it ready to be easily looked at. So let's take a look at it. John 5, we're going to look at the 19 through 23.
I think you'll just have to be very brief because we've got lots of.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Don't worry. Let's simply find the part. Here it is, committed. Okay, verse 22, the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son. So that's when the Son was given the ability to judge. And we also at some point are given the ability to judge. But now let's look down at verse 27. The Father has given him, Yeshua, authority to execute judgment.
So it's in the later verses.
Yes.
Oh, in 27. Oh,
So,
because that's not on the page.
okay,
Right.
now so think about this in terms of the 12 strands of DNA, right? The 3 strands of DNA for the Father are judgment, justice, and holiness. Yeshua was given the judgment was committed to him as the Son here in verse 22. That happened at some point in his earthly time on the earth. Okay, pardon me for the train. It'll 2-3 times and be done. I got my window open because it's hot. But okay, so at a later point, after he had been raising the dead, had begun raising the dead, or then the Father gave him, Yeshua, authority to execute judgment. And for executing judgment, see that as being equal to justice. So
yeah, okay, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so
It's awesome, isn't it?
we've got so the question comes to me is, why does Paul say resurrection from the dead and eternal judgment is basic principles and to move on from those into perfection if they're a greater work?
Aha. Well, the first 4 things of the basic principles of kingship are the works. Let's put it that way, okay? But the 5th and 6th are the greater works. And Yeshua did them while he was still on the earth. He started raising the dead after John chapter 5, right? I'm not talking about raising the dead at the end of time. I'm talking about raising the dead. Those who had died just recently, like Lazarus, Yeshua raised them from the dead, and then at a later point they die again, and then later on they actually get resurrected at the end, okay? But Yeshua also was judging and executing judgment during his earthly ministry. I don't like the word ministry. During the time that he was doing works on the earth. So the works that he did on the earth were divided up into the first part of the time as being the works, right? And then for the last part of the time on the earth, he had started to also do greater works, the greater works.
So are you saying that
These are on the earth.
are you saying the resurrection of the dead that Paul talks about is the basics of literally somebody dies in front of you and you bring them back, which is different from the greater work that Yeshua is doing now, which is resurrecting people to live physically forever, immortality?
Yes, because now let's take a look at John 14. Later on, just before Yeshua goes to the cross, he says, now, most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me, the greater works the works that I do, he will do also. Now, at this point, these are the works and the greater works that he's done on the earth. He's saying, he talks about the ones he's doing, okay? And greater works than these he will do because I go to the Father. So there are going to be even greater works that Yeshua is going to do after he goes to the Father, after he's resurrected and ascended, sits on the throne. He's sitting next to the Father now on the Father's throne, and he is going to do a second kind of greater works from there. And you and I are going to do those greater works too. Everything you see him do in the revelation of Jesus Christ, we're going to do, including resurrecting the dead, not the ones that just died recently like Lazarus, but I see us actually functioning and resurrecting the dead that have died and have been dead for 2,000 years or 4,000 years. I believe that that is a greater kind of resurrection of the dead than the resurrection of the dead when you're raising someone who's recently died. I mean, they're both greater works, but it's a greater work to raise those who've died 2,000, 4,000 years ago. So resurrection of the dead is actually a journey. You begin, or at least Yeshua began with raising people that had recently died. But then from the throne seated next to his Father on his Father's throne, he's going to be resurrecting people that have been dead for a long time. And that's, I can go very quickly into the 5 different resurrections if you want to go there.
No, I think we need to focus just generally.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you're triggering at this at the moment, I really encourage you to push in and just let go any sense of withdrawal.
Yeah.
Because there is a huge controversy around works, and a lot of people saying, we don't do any works now, we just rest in relationship. But there's a huge difference here. These greater works are so different from dead works. Yeah. And particularly when you were doing works out of oneness and you were seeing yourself as a separate thing, and you were desperately trying to get the favor of God by being a good person, that's a lot of dead works.
Yes.
But then there's living works. But these living works, I'm seeing these greater works are actually greater than living works. There's other living works when we're in oneness, but and a lot of people are doing them on encounters and doing immense governmental acts and releasing this and that.
Those are greater works.
To bring heaven to earth. But these greater works I'm seeing, actually, it's very much linked with what we've been talking about a lot, about not redeeming an old mountain and doing some of the fundamental things that need to be done before the time of the end.
Yeah.
And you can go back to our last Facebook Live on the time of the end, where we listed a lot of what of those are. And this is why it's so relevant for everyone on this journey now to grapple and press in and ask, what are the greater works I need to do to be like Yeshua? If you want to follow in his footsteps, then we have to know what journey he had after he was resurrected.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. And here's where it's important to see the revelation of Jesus Christ as not being something that's just a book about the past, or that's just about a book about the future. The revelation of Jesus Christ is about the works that Jesus did after he sat down on the throne, has been doing for the last 2,000 years. And the works that he has been doing during those 2,000 years, he shows to us, and we then do them too. So the revelation of Jesus Christ is not just a book about the past, so therefore you don't really need to get any revelation out of it. And it's not a book just about the future, like after I die. It's about now, what Yeshua is doing while he's sitting next to his Father on his Father's throne, and what we can do when we sit down next to the Father on the Father's throne. Now, I want to go down, Jane, to this verse right here, just in case people are having trouble with that. Listen, look to him. This is Yeshua speaking. There's chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation. There's 7 letters to 7 citywide ecclesias, and each of those letters, Yeshua makes promises to overcomers. We've talked about that a couple of Facebook Lives ago. To him who overcomes, Yeshua says, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. So let's do this chronologically. Yeshua overcame, talking about the cross and the time in the Garden of Gethsemane and so on. Yeshua overcame, and after he was resurrected, he ascended and sat down with the Father next to him on the throne. Many, many years ago, I had a vision of seeing the Father on the throne, and he patted the throne next to him, just like a woman would do in her house when she's sitting on her sofa and she wants her guests to come sit by her. He did that, and he was showing me that he wanted me to sit on that throne. This is what Yeshua is talking about there. That after he was resurrected, he sat down next to his Father on his Father's throne. He says that after we overcome, we can sit down with Yeshua on Yeshua's throne. And after we overcome the same way that Yeshua overcame, then we can sit down with the Father, next to the Father, on the Father's throne. The first round of greater works we talked about in John 5 get done from sitting next to Yeshua on Yeshua's throne. And the second round of greater works, the ones that are done in heaven, sitting on the Father's throne with the Father, are done on that throne. So that's
Okay.
where you get the authority to do these works.
Awesome. Awesome. So I just sense to move now into a bit of clarity around the eternal judgment that's very new for many, and there to explain the many levels of judgment, particularly at higher or lower ages. And we all know about getting ourselves judged at the mobile court. We can then sit with Father and judge ourselves in the mobile court, which is a higher age where you're starting to operate as a judge. You can then judge your own familiar spirits that are constantly telling you you're no good, or you're not this, or you're not that. And you begin to judge your own house. So these are actually all forms, I think we're in agreement that they're all forms of eternal judgment, because they're going on, ongoing until the time of all end. And then I see once there's the final judgment at the great white throne of everything, there will not be any judgment at that point, but judgment has not ceased yet, just because Yeshua died on the cross. There is some controversy, I think, in the new wineskin around this. So you have to really go and press in for your own revelation on this. And so it becomes eternal judgment. What can you say any more on eternal judgment, the higher ages? Oh yes, so judging as the Ancient of Days, we're seeing what happens there is you judge above principalities, so you're not warring with them. So sitting on a throne in old earth, killing dragons, we do not recommend. We see that as risking backlash and all sorts. So you want to be in a higher age, and to be honest, you don't want to even be seeing dragons anymore. You want to be in the Ancient of Days throne, consuming them as a throne with Father, and you are the river of fire, releasing that. Therefore, you're staying in a beautiful place where you're just consuming it without going to the lower ages. And also there's the form of eternal judgment you bring yourself to the great white throne. So I actually see that you're doing a great work, not just corporately, but when you're individually choosing to bring yourself to the lake of fire.
Exactly.
Wow, I've just seen that, Bill. I always thought greater works were corporate, but they're not.
When you bring yourself to the great white throne to be judged there, you are actually receiving eternal judgment. So remember that anytime you begin functioning in a name, the first thing you do is you receive from that name. Later on, you get trained up in how to sit on that throne and function in that towards other people. But the first thing is you go to the throne and get judged. So let's just use the example of the throne of grace, right? The scripture talks about going to the throne of grace to receive grace, right? And obtain mercy. So that's that first stage. You go to that throne to receive grace and mercy from the one that's sitting on that throne. But at a later point, you sit down on that throne, and now you're the one that's giving out grace and mercy in oneness with the one that's seated there. So and there's always three stages. The first stage is you receive this for yourself. So and then the second stage is you start doing this for other people. And the third stage is you start training other people how to do that. And that's when you're functioning as a father and showing somebody else what you are doing as a father, you show it to your son so that they can do it too. That's that third level. And that's what Yeshua was receiving from the Father. And I want to get to this point where Yeshua says up here that he cannot do anything of himself. He couldn't do any of this stuff by himself. But when he saw the Father doing it, so the Father revealed to the Son what he was doing, then the Son, it says here, the Son also does it in like manner. The Son does it exactly the same way he sees the Father doing it. Now, this is important to understand that Son is the fifth archstone of the age of Melchizedek. And as a son, you initially are, the Father shows you what he is doing, whether it's the Father or Yeshua functioning as everlasting Father, or it's a spiritual Father that's doing this work, and they now show you how to do it as their spiritual son. It's the same thing that happened when the Father showed Yeshua what he was doing and how to do it. And then Yeshua went out and did exactly the same thing in exactly the same way. Now we put ourselves in the place of Yeshua, and we're the one that's being shown how to do it. And we now do it exactly the same way that we were shown how to do it. That's functioning as a son. When you get to that third level where you're training a son, then you're functioning as a father.
Awesome.
I
just want to highlight.
I find this so exciting because there is so much that we are able to be trained into if we simply put ourselves in the place of being shown what the Father or what Yeshua is currently doing. I mean, right now, where he is right now, what he's doing on that throne with the Father, and then start doing it. It's going to be so simple once you learn this. Once you learn how to function as a son, and you have the Father or Yeshua as everlasting Father or a spiritual Father show you what they are doing and how to do it, then you can do it. It's as simple as that. Absolutely as simple as that.
Yeah, and I think I want to highlight, Father said highlight why it's relevant to the journey, eternal judgment. It's because we're on a journey to fully becoming holy, not just we are holy through Christ dying for us. We have complete ability to enter into any realm because of that work. But that we're called to the greater work of actually becoming holy. That means we don't trade at all. And then once we don't trade, we're viewed as set apart, holy.
Yeah.
And therefore, we cannot do this thing on receiving or drinking love only and not presenting ourselves for judgment. So this we will not get to that holy position without getting rid of a lot of junk, and it's an ongoing process. There does come a point where you virtually don't trade at all.
Yeah, no wrong trade.
But I don't think that that's a thing that's quick and easy. And also, if we're not alert to the fact that we're so much in the bliss, but we're not alert to anything that we may have traded wrongly, it sneaks up on you. in ways you think, oh, that's not wrong trading. I've
Well-
just had an example where I really thought I was not wrong trading. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I got the revelation I was. And I didn't see it at the time. So this is why eternal judgment is important, and we're constantly being judged, whether we like it or not. There will be consequences of our judgment, even if we don't present ourselves. I think that's the law of trading.
Yeah.
But if we were
trading
shown
holds
the
us
Ancient
back.
of Days throne.
I'm sorry, wrong trading holds us back. It does keep us from destiny. It's as
Yeah.
simple as that. And I just want to very briefly say that Paul says that we can die to sin. It's in Romans chapter 6. You want to look it up, and you look at my stuff online. I'll just say that there's a place where we die to sin. So, and it is related to having been water baptized. And then secondly, there is what's called living sacrifice, presenting yourself as a living sacrifice. And Romans chapter 12, verse 1 tells us that when we present ourselves as a living sacrifice, we at that point are entering into holiness, because it says that we are holy. It's right in there. So what I've seen is in Scripture where it speaks about the saints, right? The saints are the holy ones. Who are the holy ones? The holy ones are the ones who have presented themselves as a living sacrifice. It's as simple as that. The holy ones, there's a journey. There's a journey that begins with presenting yourself as a living sacrifice. That's the beginning of a holiness journey. And then there's an end of that journey, which is when you are fully functioning in holiness. And that's the key thing about all these things. It's not just a matter of seeing that you are something. It's a matter of learning how to do that something.
Yeah, and we were shown the Ancient of Days throne years ago. We were just led to it. I mean, probably because we had a lot of experienced people in the bench who knew their scriptures well. It doesn't always come out with an inexperienced bench. I think we have to remember that you know, you're not necessarily always seeing the fullest truth, no matter what. But it's a process, and it's a process in how much you resonate with teachings of fathers as well. Yeah. So don't think that just being on a bench is enough. I should also say, though, if you're not on a bench, you're not you can do greater works on your own, but what we found is we're led to greater revelation of the greater works in a bench. As Father honors the working in oneness together, he gives greater understanding of greater works. So you're actually missing out on doing some of the most profound greater works to become great. Your name could be great. And we're seeing many are just not that keen on benches. But it's been the most profound journey I've had in the last 5 years of my life. The works that have been done, and I know now I've been told my name is great in heaven. When I walk around and go in rooms, people stand up and they honor me. I'm no longer part of the cloud of witnesses, just the masses. You've got a choice. Do you want to be part of the masses, or do you want to be great, your name great? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely a destiny that Father longs for all of us. And I know I crave after that. And what I find is the more you want to be great, the more solid you are on this journey. And it catapults you. If you fight with being great, you're much weaker. You're like, oh, well, I'm too busy doing, this in my life. I haven't got time for a bench today. And the other thing is, Father showed me, it's important you actually give up something, which is part of being a living sacrifice. The greater you give up something that's valuable to you for doing the greater works and giving time for benches or time for learning and doing this, the more you will be stronger on the journey. If you try and add this to an already busy life and put it as last place when you've got a bit of time, it just doesn't work that way. You'll probably be knocked off quite early on. And I think the reason why our bench has lasted 5, I think maybe 6 years weekly with barely a break is because Bill and I both made the biggest sacrifice very early on. We gave up so much to do this journey, and we kept giving and giving. It was joyous. I can say that. It was not,
Yes.
whipping yourself on the back going, I must do this. It was a much better destiny for both of us. But because we gave that, we were honored with the most immense mandates. We attracted people with the most immense understanding of new wineskins. Within a couple of years, we'd identified 5 major wineskins that we're seeing barely anyone's talking about currently. It was just profound. But I want to get to this point, Bill, around the Yeshua judges and Father gives it over to Yeshua.
Okay, so yeah.
But we're seeing, the Ancient of Days throne, we're seeing is Father on the throne from Scripture, but invites Yeshua to sit on the throne. But isn't there a point in which they always still work together, never separately?
Well, the Father and the Son are one, right? There's just not going to be any other way. They're always, the two are one. This verse 22 of chapter 5, for the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son. So up until that point, the Father had been doing all the judgment. Think about when the Father came down with the angels to judge Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That was the Father. And at the Tower of Babel, the Father and the 2 angels, that was the Father. The Father was doing all the judgment up until this point when he gave it over to the Son. And after that, the Son is doing all the judgment. But he tells us down here how the Son himself tells us how he does the judgment. He says, I can of myself do nothing. As I hear, who's he listening to? The Father. I judge. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is righteous. So doing judgment this way results in righteous judgment. So you don't have to be concerned about judge not lest you be judged, right? Because you're doing righteous judgment. And Yeshua says, because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father. So there you see living sacrifice, right? Doing the will of the Father who sent me. So Yeshua tells us how he does the judging. He does the judging listening to the Father. So picture this, the Father's on the Father throne, the Son is sitting next to him, and the Son is listening to the Father. I can just picture the Father whispering in his ear, right? About how to do this, about what the judgment is. As I hear, I judge. So guilty or not guilty, the Father says guilty or not guilty, then the Son does the judgment of guilty or not guilty. The Father says, here's the sentence, and the Son says, this is the sentence. And then when it comes down to executing judgment, that's something that the Father has also given to the Son. Now, when it says the Son, think of two people. The Son is Yeshua, but the Son is also us in oneness with Yeshua as the Son.
Okay, so it's fair to say the Father, the Son, and us are judging at the Ancient of Days.
Yeah.
Throne.
As the Father sitting, I think, like, so for example, the Ancient of Days throne is the Father's throne. It's one aspect of the Father's throne. So is the Great White Throne. It's one aspect of the Father's throne. In both cases, the Son is now sitting next to the Father, and there's going to be a time in each of your journeys, if you persist in this and if you follow this up, what we're saying today, there'll come a time you'll actually sit down on that throne with, I suppose, it's actually you and the Son and the Father, all 3 of you on the throne. Okay? picture three of you sitting on the sofa, only it's three of you sitting on the seat, on the throne there, and we are being taught how to do judgment just the way Yeshua was taught how to do judgment. And I don't know who's actually telling you the judgment, whether it's the Father or the Son. In the case of us, I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually Yeshua telling us what judgment to make. Now, you're gonna hear. It's very, very interesting. You see what the Father's doing and how to do it, then you do it. But with judgment, you hear the guilty or not guilty and the sentence and so on. You hear it.
And there's never been a time where we need to judge so many things and kings of the earth than now. So if this isn't part of your journey, you may just want to step into the hunger of that, and then you'll get led that way. If you're subconsciously saying, well, it's not loving, then you may not be led that way. And then you'll miss out on some of the characteristics of Father, that is judgment and justice. And the earth is groaning for justice right now. There's so much injustice. It's unbelievable. It's out of control.
Each of us
and you will not
too.
grow. Yeah, and you will not grow into Father's characteristics if you have not learned to judge. No matter how much you look into his eyes and are in relationship, if you've never tried to do this and allowed him to teach you this, there's an element you're blocking him.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so important to realize that this goes beyond loving people. Well, in fact, no, let me rephrase that. This is a form of love. Love is justice. Love is judgment. Without that, that is not true love.
Think about it, the criminal on the street with a gun, and he or she has been stealing and maybe other things even worse. It is love to get that person off the street. First off, it's love for the people that have been getting robbed and worse, right? So that person's not there to do that anymore. That's love for those people, but it's also love for that person that's been doing it, because they're going to reap what they sow, and you can put them in a place where they can't reap anymore, can't sow anymore, no more wrong trading, because you're in jail, you can't do this stuff. It's actually making it easier on them. They're not going to have to reap more what they've sowed. It is loving. Justice, judgment is very, very loving. What's the world like if there's no judgment? It's full of criminals.
I mean, look what's happened now.
Killed all the time. That's
yes.
And the other point too, Jane, is that each of us down inside of us has this strong sense of it's not fair.
Yeah.
And that thing inside you that says it's not fair is kingship. And it is crying out for judgment and justice. And the judgment needs to be passed, and justice needs to be executed.
So I think we probably should finish shortly, but I just wanted to reinforce again, you're on a journey to become a great king.
Yeah.
And you can start this journey by sitting on the greatness throne, one of the headship thrones. You start becoming a head, not just part of the body. And to realize that there is difference between great and greater works. So really press in for the difference. And I think what we said earlier, I'm still resonating that was right, that the greater works are those final things that Yeshua did to bring about the end, the time of all end, those major things, bringing in the great harvest, collapsing Babylon, putting the beast and into the lake of fire. Those types of things are the greater works, A great work might be increasing the frequency of the planet, releasing love,
If it's done as a king.
being a capstone, maybe a
Yes.
great work.
Yeah.
But there are some very specific governmental acts that you will see in the end of the book of Revelation. They're so, once you get used to looking for them, they're there, so obvious that when you see anything that was, the angels were mandated to blow the trumpet, for example, that's one.
Yeah.
You can just step into those on a future timeline and say, I'm doing that to bring about the time of the end. And you will have done the most profound works like Yeshua has done. And that's very, very exciting.
Yes.
Are we complete?
Yes, we are. So thank you, everybody. Don't forget One United Body's website. There are pages there, .org, oneunitedbody.org. There are messenger chats and telegram chats that you can be a part of for daily discipling. Anything else we want to mention before we finish here, Jane?
Just the intensive. It's
Oh,
an
yes.
ongoing bi-weekly thing that you can join anytime. There's not a start and end date. You can come for a 2-week trial period. We do encourage people after that to give a donation. But even if you can't make the actual time, you can listen to the recording. But we're really looking for people who want to grow and be leaders and who will actually attend and contribute. But do share that around as well. The details of the intensive are on the homepage. We've got a new link now right on the homepage. Just click on that to find the Telegram chat and come and join that and check us out.
Recordings of the previous intensives are on there. It's Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every 2 weeks. It's not this week because we're having this on Wednesday. It's next week.
And we're trying to summarize some of the most profound truths for you. So you don't have to do hundreds and thousands of hours of encounter like we did from scratch. We laid down every understanding there is and just asked about every mystery there is in the book. But we want to summarize that for you so you can then accelerate into higher mysteries and higher encounters. I think if we all go back to not trusting any father for anything and asking every single question, we probably will get overwhelmed and exhaustion unless you've got 0 things on your plate and all the time in the world. There has to be an element where you learn to resonate with certain fathers, and then you go and to the next step beyond that. That's the journey. We certainly resonated with some truths. We didn't go in about, is the mobile court really a real place? We just resonated that it was. The same with trading and crowns and thrones. And once we just saw the truth, we just knew, because we knew we'd been on a long journey of relationship. Both Bill and I have been on this journey of committed relationship with the Godhead for 40 years. So you do know his ways. And if you can resonate with some of these truths and then begin to see if they flow in your benches, you're probably going to get on the best journey ever.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Honor you, love you guys, and thank you, Bill. Immense revelation. Honor you for the time that you put into seeing these truths and connecting the dots with this scripture and that scripture is infused knowledge, and it is profound function that apostles do. And that's what Paul did, and Bill's doing the same, and bringing us to immense revelation that is just stunning. Who'd have thought 10 years ago we'd be doing great works as one with the Godhead?
Yes.
Ah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yes.
Thanks,
Honor
everyone.
you as well, Jane. I'm turning the live stream off now. And I'm turning the recording off. And it's just